What's up guys, it's Matt Collins Jones here, also known as a D365 Geek, and today I'm talking about Power Automate and I'm going to talk about how to calculate age. Now, I've tried to calculate age a few different times over the years. So I come from a Dynamics or a CDS or Dynamics 365 CE background, and one of the requirements that I get a lot is on calculating age. So there's various different ways you can do it. You can use business rules. So a business rule would allow you to do things like date diff and therefore be able to calculate an age. This method wasn't the best, mainly because you would have to open up a form to have the business rule run. You would also have an issue of if you rounded it up to a whole number, if the person's birthday was that month, it would round up that month and not on the day. If you left it as a decimal, it's then a decimal number and doesn't look great. There are other options as well. You could use things like JavaScript or plugins. These were a little bit better, but again, still had some drawbacks in the fact that you could you needed a way to trigger these events, trigger the plugin, trigger the JavaScript to recalculate. And to do that, you'd need to know which which records you want to run this on, so say a contact record, or just run them on everything, which then leads to performance problems. Similar things with workflows as well. I've used workflows in the past to try weighting conditions, but it just never really seemed like a good enough solution. So as I've been learning more and more about Power Automate, I thought I'd take another crack at this problem, and I think I finally solved it. So I want to share that with you guys today. So I'm doing this from a CDS background, but the principle should work across anything, so SharePoint or a database, etc. So I'm in my CDS environment here, my Dynamics 365 environment, and I'm on my contact records. You may notice a pattern going on here with my contacts. I'm going to click on New, and I'll type in a bit of information. So Dick Grayson, who is a Robin. Now I've added a few custom fields here. So I've got age, which is a custom field. This is a whole number field. I've got date of birth here, which is just a normal calendar entry field. I'm going to choose today, but we'll change the year to 2002, which would make Robin 17 years today. I've got this DOB string field as well. So age will automatically calculate, and DOB string is what we want to populate as well. Again, this is just a string field. This is just to store some information, and I'll try to show you what we're doing with that later on. So I'll flick over to my my Power Automate flow, and this is the first flow. So this is a two-part flow solution. The first part of it, we are using the CDS current environment connector, and we're triggering on create or update of a contact record. We're also filtering the attribute of Matt's date of birth. So what this does is this, when you create a contact record or when you update the contact record's date of birth field, it will trigger this flow. And that's what this trigger is supposed to do. The next thing we're going to do is we're actually going to get the date of birth and we're going to format it. So if I expand this expression here, so we've got a format date function here, and then inside the format date function we have the trigger output from the trigger control that we're using, and we're getting the Matt_date of birth field. So this field here that we populated. Once we have that field, we're going to format it as date, month. This is I think this is an ISO standard in terms of formatting dates. And then once we've done that, we are then going to convert that to be a string. So I'm going to convert the output of this from date, month into a string. Now, there's a reason why we do this, and this is for helping us query the records in the next flow. So as we update the record, we choose the record that we're updating, so contacts. The item ID is from the initial trigger, so the contact record that triggered this flow, we are going to update it. And if we scroll down, there we go, DOB string. So we're populating the output of that compose action up here, which is the string day, month, into there. Once we're happy with that, wrong flow, we can save this record. So that's all this flow will do, is it will convert it on create of a record. It will convert just the birth day and birth month to a string. Now the reason why we convert the birth day and birth month to a string is that we need to match the number of records with the person's birthday. So if you have a system that has maybe 10,000, 100,000 contact records, you don't want to run flows every day to check to see if it's someone's birthday. What you want to do is you want to check to see if you want to query the database, check to see if it's someone's birthday and pull back just those records. You don't want to pull back everyone's records and go through them one by one to check to see if it's their birthday. Unfortunately, when you use sort of conversions and things like that, you can't specify, I just want to match the first day in the first month, I don't want to match the year. When you're trying to query these records, you have to pull back an exact string, or like, after or before, or a date range when you're talking about dates. But when we talk about strings, we can actually just use the string itself. So if I go back to the contact record and refresh this, we should see that the DOB string has now updated. So that's why I was talking for a couple of minutes. I wanted to have that update. So we now know that there is a person's birthday in the system with 11 of 12, which is today's date. So I'm currently recording this on the 11th of December 2019 at 8 o'clock. So that's the first bit of it. Now, I said this is so that we can query the database, because we can't run a query to just pull back anything that has today's day and month and ignore the year. So the first thing we do is get rid of the year, format as a string, and then we can do an exact match on the database for any records that exactly match that, therefore pulling back people's birthday. So that's the first one. So this is just a small flow that runs on create or update of a contact record. Next, we have our calculate age flow. So first things first, this is a recurrence flow. So this is going to run every one day. We can specify a time if we like, and what this will do is this will run. The next step is it will format today's date, and again we're just formatting the UTC now. So we're getting today's date at UTC and formatting it as day, month. Now, if you work in a company in a country that has a dramatically different time zone than UTC, so maybe +7, +9, or +12, you may need to adjust this step so that you get back the correct day in your time zone. But luckily, Flow allows you to use functions to be able to do that. You can check out one of my videos on my channel about how to convert time zones. So what we want to do is we want to format this as date, month, and then we're going to use that step next. So in the list records function here, we are looking at contacts and we are filtering contacts where the mat DOB string equals the output to this bit. So if we know today is 11/12, the output here will be 11/12. And when we run this, it will query the database and say, give me everything back that has 11/12 in that DOB string field, which is exactly what we want. We don't want to be running this on 10,000 records, 100,000 records. We want to be running this on sort of like 1, 2, maybe a dozen records each time. And if you had a date field, you could not use this query because the date would not match exactly. You could put in a date range, but then it would pull back all the records. It just doesn't work as a date. So that's why I converted it to a string, then formatting the date here so we can use that again in a query to pull back just those records. That was the first problem that I've overcome. So that's why I like Power Automate, because it allows me to do stuff like this. So the next bit is we want to update the records with the age. So because there could be multiple records pulled back, Microsoft Power Automate automatically puts an apply to each around the outputs, but you can do this manually as well. So just hit Control, apply to each, and then put some controls in here. Now the first step here, Parse JSON, what I actually did for this is when I tried to use the outputs to calculate the age, it didn't work, and it was because I didn't have the dynamic content from this record inside my apply to each. So my first step here, Parse JSON, this looks at the current item, so the current one that is listed and pulled back in the apply to each, and it's trying to take all the JSON. So Dynamics CE uses JSON language to build queries and things like that. So the data to come back is in JSON. So by parsing the JSON, I can actually pull out the dynamic content that I need. So I need like the age or the date of birth from that content so that I can get that out and then use that later on. And this is just a step because I can't use the dynamic content. So once I've parsed the JSON and get that information out, I can then do my query. Now this is the complicated bit, and as you can see as I hover over, it's quite a long expression. So if I click into it, it's got all these bits into it. So what I've done is I've actually pulled this into Notepad++ and tried to format it a little better so you can see what it is doing. So we'll break this down and we'll go kind of from the inside outwards, and we'll kind of go through what this does. So the first thing, this ticks body parse JSON mat date of birth. This is the parse JSON action, and it's pulling back that mat date of birth field that I wanted out of the dynamic content, out of the JSON. So that's why I parse the JSON, so I could use this bit in here. Now, ticks are an unusual thing. I didn't really understand what ticks were, so I had to do some research when I was trying to figure out the solution. So a tick is 100 nanoseconds from 1601 to 1601 January 1st at midnight UTC. That's quite an unusual thing. So it basically counts the number of like the 100 nanoseconds between any periods in time. So the first bit of this is I am actually subtracting the number of ticks from UTC now, so what is the time and date right now, from the number of ticks between from the date of birth. So how many ticks have ever existed from 1601 at UTC midnight on January 1st, from the number of ticks since the date of birth, and that will give me the difference between now and the date of birth field. So that's the first bit of this. This subtract bit just subtracts the time now from the time then and returns back an answer to me. The next bit is a divide. So we are dividing the number of ticks between these two values by, I think that's like 864 billion, yeah, something like that. So we divide it by this, and this is the number of ticks in a day. So the number of times 100 nanoseconds go into 24 hours. So we divide it by that to give us the number of days between today's date and the date of birth. Hopefully that makes sense. The next thing we do is we divide that number of ticks, so that number of days that we've then figured out, by 325, the number of days in a year. So this is a rough number of days. This is the much more accurate figure, but for our purposes, all we really need is 365.25 to include leap years. Right, the next bit after that is we actually convert this to a string. Now we convert it to a string because what we want to do is we want to split out the difference. So this will actually return you a decimal figure, and we don't want a decimal figure because a decimal is not very nice to look at. When's the last time someone told you I am 30.00794235789 years old? It's never happened to me. I have kids tell me that they're 3 1/4. That's cute, but in the real world we don't work in those standards, so I don't want a decimal. So we convert it to a string because then we can use a split functionality and use the dot in the decimal to actually just take to split out the two queries. So the first part of the decimal and the last part, so the whole number and then the decimal. We then use the first command, or the first expression, to then just return the first bit of that. So again, we're getting rid of the rest of the decimal and we're just using the first bit. We are then converting this back to an integer, because again, we want a whole number because we want to work with numbers. So that's what this one does. And then add, we're going to add 1 to the answer. Now the reason we're adding 1 to the answer is that when we run this, this is going to run and it's going to not interpret the date or the age as being the new age. So what that means is if it's someone's birthday today, it will assume that is their birthday at 11:59 and 59 seconds, because they could be born at any point during that day. So when we actually do this tick calculation, we don't know that that person is 31. They could still be 30 because of the way the numbers work. So what we actually do here is we add 1 to the answer, because when we take away the rest of the decimal number, so it'll be like 30.9995246, for instance, by adding 1 to the number, we can actually increase that to their defined age. So we know that when this runs, we are adding 1 to their age, and therefore they are actually that years old today. Because if your birthday is on the 11th of December, and you wake up and people wish you happy birthday, that's because you are, that many years old. They don't go, hold on, although you were born today, we're actually going to celebrate your birthday tomorrow. Just no one really does that. So we add 1 to the answer, and therefore we can get that back. So it looks like a bit of a menacing or tricky formula, an expression, but it's actually, when you break it down into the simplest components, it's not that bad. It's just you have to go from inside out to kind of understand how it all works. So hopefully that makes sense. So we do that calculation and then we update the record. So again, we're just using the contact record that we got up there, and down here we put the output there. So let's test this flow. So at the moment, we do not have an age on Dick Grayson. He was born on the 11th of December 2002, which should make him 17 years old today. So we go back to edit the flow. No, wrong one. Go to edit the flow, and we'll just test this. I'll just test this. Click I'll perform the trigger action. Click test. Run the flow. Click done. Flow ran successfully. That's great. We'll go back to our CDS, we'll refresh the page, and we can see that they are 17. So they are full number 17, whole number 17. If we do a advanced find on contact records, we can use expressions like anyone between the ages of 17 to 30, because we're using a whole number field. And because we're not using a decimal, it's easy for people to read. If my advanced find was to load. Just close that down, try it again. Here we go. And this is what we want to do. So we'll go in, we'll choose age, and we'll choose age greater than 17. We'll choose, and see where it returns. So Hal Jordan and just greater than, not equal, equal to or greater than is what we wanted. And we get Dick Grayson in there. If we want equal to or less than 17, then we just have Dick Grayson. We don't have Bruce Wayne or Hal Jordan. So we can then use these functions to then do other things. So use cases for things like this are you're creating an event and it's an over 18s only event. Someone may turn 18 before the event, which means they'll be allowed in, but maybe at the time of the booking they're actually 17, so you need a way to calculate that difference or flag it up in the system. You could use something like this. I've had issues in the past where, or requirements in the past where customers have specialized teams that are allowed to see certain pieces of contact information when the contact themselves is below the age of 18 or below the age of 16, and then they need a way for it to automatically show to other people once they're above that age. Again, using things like business rules, using things like plugins and things like that. They're all great. They all kind of do the job, but nothing has ever solved this problem for me the way this solution has. So that's why I am really proud of this solution and why I'm really happy that I came up with it. So yeah, let me know if this is helpful to everyone. I'd really appreciate any feedback on this. I've got this all detailed on my blog as well. So if there's any bits that you didn't see or you're not capturing very well on YouTube, by all means, you can check out my blog. It'll be in the description down below. You can see all the details there, step by step, of how I've done everything. If you do have any more questions, I'm more than happy to answer them. But yeah, I really hope this solution will help people. So if this video was helpful, please like, please share it with your friends, and I'll see you next time.